Welcome to Unapologetically Athletic, where we take a deep dive into the stories, triumphs, and challenges in women's sports on both the collegiate and professional levels. I'm your host, Kate Dahlhauser, and today we will be kicking things off, pun intended, with a sport that's not only fast-paced and fiercely competitive, but one that's been the forefront in the fight for equity and recognition. Soccer! For this episode, I'm joined by former TCU Horned Frogs starting forward Allison Ganter. During her time at TCU, she received Big 12 honors such as first team academic All Big 12 in 2015, 16, and 17, as well as being named Big 12 Player of the Week in 2017. She's here to share her firsthand experiences, what it's like to compete at the collegiate level, the challenges she and others faced, and where she sees the game will be in the future. Allison, welcome. I'm so excited for you to be on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So what's your story to soccer? How did you start?
I think I was about 4 or 5. Can't really remember the specific age, but one of our family friends was starting a little co-ed team, just like in the local league. And so they got me out there, and I think it was one of those things where my parents knew kind of right away that it clicked pretty well for me. And I played really just rec for a long time. Kind of went into club a little bit later than most, like around 5th grade, which is kind of late for people now. But I played for a really good team in Dallas for a long time, all throughout high school, and then ended up making it to TCU. So it was an awesome ride for sure.
Did you have any connection to TCU before you went?
Yeah, not really. I'm from Dallas originally, so I knew it was pretty close. I was looking at SMU for a second, but felt a little too close to home. So at least getting, 45 minutes away was a little bit better. But no, whenever I actually went out there for a interview or to meet the coaches and everything, I loved it there. And they were just starting as coaches there. So I kind of liked the idea of starting off kind of a new program with some new coaches, and also with it being pretty close to home. My whole time there, my family and close friends and extended family, all of them got to go to all of my games. So that was just, another plus for TCU.
That's so awesome. It's nice that TCU is so close to home. It's only like an hour away. For going to TCU all the time because my mom and aunt went there.
Okay.
Beautiful campus.
It was really awesome.
What was one of your most memorable moments on the field at TCU?
Yeah, so we were, like I was saying, our coaches were pretty new. They had coached there the year before me, but my class was actually the first recruiting class. And so it was definitely kind of a rebuilding phase in the first 2 years. And so by my sophomore year, we had some pretty good girls on the team, but we had never made it to the NCAA tournament as a program. So that was kind of like our main goal. And so my junior year, we did okay throughout the season, but we really needed to almost win the Big 12 tournament to make it to the NCAA tournament. And we actually made it to the final. Unfortunately, lost to West Virginia. He was like kind of top 5 at the time. So that was still pretty cool, but we did make it to the NCAA tournament. So first time in program history, which was really, really cool. And I mean, now they've been every single year since. So, definitely kind of started a trend there. So it's cool to kind of be part of that, the first group to make it. So I'd say that was kind of one of the cooler things just for even like the program in general to get that far.
That's awesome. You've definitely paved the way to be like, hey, we were the first ones. You guys got to continue this tradition, make it a tradition now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. What were some of the challenges you saw or faced trying to get into and go to the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I mean, the season it's kind of a grind. It's a really short preseason, so you get about 20, 25 days to really kind of work with your coaches. Before that, they can't be around. So it's kind of fast paced at the beginning. And, starting off, it was a bunch of new girls and new programs. So, kind of getting more of a collective unit is hard, especially, when you're trying to go to school and also be a student. And so, the Big 12 is and also was, back at that time when OU and UT were in it, it was very, very competitive. And so, we kind of beat each other up. One team would win one game, or, we'd have a lot of upsets. So that made it kind of hard to make your standing higher. But, we had a decent amount of people from the Big 12 in the NCAA tournament every year. So that was like, pretty good building blocks when you were playing in the league. So
That's awesome. What were some of the challenges that you yourself faced as a female athlete, either in college or in general?
I will say, luckily, I feel like throughout my whole time in soccer, I was pretty fortunate. I played for, at the time, they were an all girls club team. They're very well known in Dallas. And so there's a ton of support through them. So they kind of paved the way throughout my high school career. And then TCU actually did a really good job as well with all the sports, but, specifically the female sports. We had just as nice of weightlifting equipment. Like all of our facilities were awesome. Even academically, like, we had access to any tutors that we needed. They really made, it a big deal. To be a student athlete, you need some support and help. And so soccer in general is nice because we actually got a decent amount of funding. I know it's not the same for every sport, but, they definitely put a lot into our program, and our fields were always really top notch. So for me, I didn't have, too many difficulty in that department, but, just in general, being a college athlete, it is kind of a job. So, it was a lot of practicing, long nights, studying, things like that. But I feel like overall it was really a great experience for me.
Was it hard to balance like the soccer life, student athlete with academics? Because you're now an orthopedic physician's assistant. That had to be a lot of schooling. What was that trying to juggle both of those?
Undergrad's kind of the same. You have to do a master's afterwards, but I mean, we were gone for a lot of the fall because that's when our season was. And I remember my junior year, I think we went to like a week worth of class, like in one whole month. So I will say the teachers were really understanding, especially if you were in a tournament kind of at the end of the year. They'd push things back for you or let you take the tests, at a different time when you were actually in town. But yeah, it was definitely a lot. They made you go to study hall, so that way they knew you were putting time in and things like that. But it was a lot of, studying on planes or in our buses. They try to pave out some part of our days so that way you could go to class or study when we were on trips. But I definitely had to take some classes in the summer just to kind of offset what I was doing during the year. That was kind of the hard thing. Go to more of like a medical profession, you need some sort of hours kind of shadowing and stuff like that. And so I tried to do that a lot during my breaks. So like summer or Christmas break, because I just really didn't have a lot of time for that during the year with soccer.
That sounds so hectic. Wow. What if you could write a letter to soccer? What would you say? What would you want to say to it?
That's a good question. Thank you for all the years that I was able to play. Luckily, I didn't have very many injuries, which I know a lot of, especially female athletes in all sports, but mainly soccer, go through. But also just, being able to play the sport that I loved, but kind of getting more life experience out of it. The amount of places that I got to travel, like throughout all the different conferences, like got way more experience than I ever would have in terms of traveling. And then also just a lot of my friends, you kind of create a bond with a lot of your teammates. And so I still have good friends from my club days, high school soccer, and then now at TCU. And so I still have all of those friends, the coaches, everything like that. Really become more of like a family because you're with them 24/7. Without that type of experience, I don't think you really get that same effect that you get through sports.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Soccer is definitely a very challenging sport, and it's very, very physical and very demanding. And even on the professional aspect, you're seeing these females working and working and working. And I have mad respect for female
Yeah.
athletes because it is very like it's so much love, but so much time put into
Mm.
it. And on the professional level with the US women's national team, it's gotten so popular in these recent years and decades ago too, with their fight for equal pay after the 2015 Women's World Cup when they won for the third time and they were fighting for equal pay because they were paid less than the men who haven't even won a World Cup.
Right. Yeah.
That was in 2015 was when it started, I believe, your sophomore year. What were your thoughts when you heard that all of this was going down?
Yeah, I think it's been really cool overall. I was very young when the 99 team, originally won. And I think that really started the momentum. And then from there, like you were saying, 2015 was a big one. But I remember even in middle school watching them play, whether it was World Cup or, the Olympics, was a lot of following, even when unfortunately the men's team sometimes wasn't making it. I think people really rallied around it. And so I think for not only myself, but a lot of people my age and even now younger, it really helped grow the sport a ton. I think, overall, there's definitely some things that, need to still be worked on. But I think some of the people that have kind of stepped up have made it a much bigger venue for sports. And so now you start seeing a lot more fans at some of these games. And I think they really paved the way. And it's been cool to watch because it wasn't really a big deal. Just even soccer in general is not really the biggest American sport, with having football and baseball kind of being the main thing. When you go over to Europe, that's their football, and so they have a lot of funding behind it. So it is hard over here because even men's soccer doesn't get paid nearly as much as some of the other professional sports do. I think what some of these athletes have been doing has been really cool to see, trying to grow the sport and make it more accessible to a lot of people. It's been really a good thing.
A really notable one would for that I've really noticed would be Alex Morgan. I mean, she started the Alex Morgan Foundation and I believe it was 2023 to set out and find and identify the roadblocks that some women face on the journey on their soccer journey. In 2021, Alex Morgan, Sue Bird, Chloe Kim, and Simone Manuel and their company together promoting women's sports and the impact and the diversity and the equality that women have in the sport of soccer. And
Mhm.
I absolutely love like their merchandise that says everyone watches women's sports. Like on the Together website, it says that women make up 44% of all contributors in sports that only get less than 16% of the media coverage. That is absolutely crazy. And in a survey that Sports 5 conducted, surveying 12,000 fans from multiple different countries like Germany, Spain, the UK, and US, 76% of them felt that they didn't see enough coverage. And 58% of them got their information from TV, which makes me think, are they getting the information that this match is on when they're seeing that this match is going on while it's live on TV? What do you think the media could do, or how do you think the importance of media is in covering these women's games and these soccer games is for the impact of just women in general in this very male-dominated industry?
Yeah, so when I was at TCU, I think when I first started, it was being broadcasted. Like all of our home games were broadcasted on Fox Sports Southwest, which you needed like I think a subscription for, like an extra TV package. And so like a lot of my family friends and people got that, and we'd have people here and there be like, oh, I saw you on TV, randomly, but it wasn't very much. And then even in the last few years, they've done a good job moving all the women's sports to ESPN Plus, which has been a huge deal. So you still need subscription, but at least it's being more readily available. I think media today is something that is pretty, everybody's on it, whether it's social media or, like you said, just even TV coverage. But it has been cool to see. I know for the NWSL, the professional league for women, they're showing it on Ion now, which is kind of a bigger broadcast. And so I see commercials all the time for that. And I do have some teammates that do play still professionally. And, I think they're trying really hard in terms of like social media and stuff to get more people out there. But I think still work to be done, but I think overall there have been some pretty good changes in the media. I know not soccer related, but even this year, our basketball team at TCU, our women's basketball team, was like the best that they've ever been. And they were getting a ton of media coverage. We were having a lot of people on campus, which isn't usual for, women's sports. They're doing like Sports Illustrated covers of some of our players. And I went to one of their playoff games, and it was like the most packed stadium that I've ever seen. It's been really cool to see, like, not only soccer, I feel like most of the women's sports they're really trying to step up. And, I think as fans see that, the games are still really fun and high paced, and, it's an awesome environment, I think that will get more and more people out there. I think they've started making some good strides with some of the other TV contracts and things like that.
The National Women's Soccer League, the NWSL, in 2024 surpassed 2 million regular season attendance.
Wow. Yeah.
First time ever in history. 89 of the matches that season had 10,000 fans present,
That's
which
awesome.
that's incredible. I definitely feel like the women's national team brought a lot of recognition and made sports fans of the US like go, okay, the women's national team is one of the most well-known teams in the nation and in the world.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I think it's just really impressive and really good that more and more people are interested in women's sports and in women's soccer, and not just when it's the Olympics or when it's a World Cup. But I personally wish that they would show more like women's national team games or NWSL games on TV. I remember years ago, ESPN announced ESPNW was going to be a broadcast station and it was only going to show women's sports. I've seen it, like I've seen the social media accounts for ESPNW, but never have seen the broadcast station.
Yeah, I haven't either.
When is it going to happen? TikTok.
Mhm.
What were the fans like at TCU when you were there?
Yeah, they were actually awesome. And I was going to mention that as well, because I think part of it also is about community. And if people are kind of rallying around whatever team, so whether that's, professional or even the college at TCU, we're a really small school. Not that many people know that, but I think we've grown now that our football team got a little bit better. But we usually have like 10,000 to 12,000 students in the whole school. So it's a really small campus, and we don't have much alumni compared to some of the other schools. But consistently the whole time I was there, we were in the top 10 for attendance nationally, like out of all the schools. And at that point, we weren't even making it to an NCAA tournament. So your point where hopefully people watch whether you're in a tournament or not, like in a big stage, they did a really good job at TCU. Fort Worth's got a really good community where they want to come out to as many games as they can. I think the biggest thing is we'd have a ton of younger girls at our team where the coaches made a point every single season to have their whole team come out and watch at least one game. So we'd have certain nights where there'd be tons of teams. We'd, have them all come out on one night, or we would do little clinics and stuff like that just to kind of get them out and see what we were about. And like I said, we were in the top 10 nationally every single year for attendance. And I think it's still that way. I mean, we still have a lot of people, but it does, make a big difference too when you're playing, when you see a bunch of people up in the stands, even, when we be playing at 1 p.m. on a Sunday in the middle of the heat in August. It does make a big difference when you're trying to play and knowing that you have people around you rooting you on. So I'm definitely very fortunate at TCU. We had a lot of following, which was awesome.
That's amazing. That's great for like such a small school. I remember going to basketball games as a kid. I've been going to TCU football games for a while. The TCU fan base is very loyal.
Yeah.
One thing that I really like about TCU, would fans travel with you guys?
Not necessarily for soccer. All of our family would for sure, which was awesome. And then now, as our coaches have been there for a while, if there's certain girls that live in different states, then yes, they drive a little bit to get to the game, which is really cool. But no, they wouldn't necessarily travel for our soccer games, but that would be awesome if they did. But even just having people there on your home field was such a cool experience. Even for the first NCAA tournament game we ever played, it was cool because we got to play at our home field. that was one of the most packed games that I'd ever played. We had thousands of people there. And so that makes the game just such a different atmosphere. You feel more energized when there's a ton of people there. And so the good thing is, too, I mean, even when we'd go play at different colleges, there would be a lot of people out there. Sometimes they were, heckling you a little bit, which makes it fun too. But it was cool to see that there were a lot of like student fans and also just people in the community for, all of the Big 12 schools and even some of the ones that we played in, preseason when they were pretty far away. That was cool to see too.
That's awesome. What was one of your favorite team that you played?
Yeah, we had some rivalries just in general with some of the teams. West Virginia was kind of the powerhouse of the Big 12 when I was there. They were kind of known for getting a lot of Canadian players, and some of their players had actually played in the Olympics the season before or the summer before the fall when we played, and they had two girls that had won a bronze medal. You're going up against them, and it's kind of a big deal just because they've played against all these awesome people in the Olympics, and they were ranked number one in the nation at the time, and we played them in the finals of the Big 12 tournament. One of my other teammates, then myself, actually, we scored that game, and we were up 2-0. We ended up losing 3-2, but that's okay. It was just cool to play against people of that level. They're playing against the Alex Morgans and all of those people. And so it was just really cool to be a part of that because that's not something that everybody gets to do. All of the home games are so fun. That's what I feel like I miss the most is being able to go out there and play in a really competitive game, have all the fans out there, and playing pickup's fun too. But when it was that competitive, that's the stuff you really miss.
Yeah. How would you describe your greatest moment?
Getting into the NCAA tournament, that was definitely one. But I'd say senior year was a good year for me. We were doing pretty good, and I was kind of the one that was the designated penalty kick taker. In the first few games, I had like some big ones where we won the game because of it, which was awesome. But midway through, I did miss one, like it hit off the post. The PKs are kind of those where they can kind of get into your head. So kind of like free throws, field goals, you can start kind of getting into a mental game and think about it too much. And so I was practicing a bunch on them and not really taking them as much in the games. And then we made it to the Big 12 semifinal that year, and we were going to PKs to move on to the finals. And I hadn't taken a PK the whole rest of that season, and my coaches were like, "No, you're gonna go take one." And so I was the fourth one out of five, and that's a pretty important spot because it kind of can make or break where you are in the lineup there if your team has made some or not. And I made that one, and then my other teammate made it, and we went on to the finals. And I feel like for me, that was a big moment. Some of the other ones were awesome too, but kind of just getting over that, I guess, mental hurdle is kind of a big deal in sports. And so it was kind of cool coming from doing really good at one point and then kind of hitting a slump and then kind of, ending off the season and with a more confident note. That was a really good part for me.
That's amazing. Like, I know that there are some athletes that get really in their head with penalty kicks.
Yeah.
How did you keep yourself from getting too stuck in your head? Like, was there a routine that you did?
Yeah, the biggest thing is there's all these people around, they're all watching you, and a lot of times it's pretty high pressure. It's usually at the end of the game, or for this is like a tournament. But you kind of just have to block everybody out, honestly. And some people have routines. I just kind of knew where I wanted to go, and I'd been practicing a lot. And honestly, one of our goalie coaches had like really been helping me and was just trying to help me get out of my head and just keep working on hitting it there every single time. So I didn't have any idea of going anywhere else. And finally it clicked. And it's just one of those things where that's where soccer in general is awesome to play the sport. But I feel like sports in general give people such a good opportunity for just like resilience and life lessons that like you'll need later in life, whether it's with work or family or whatever it might be. And you don't get that with many other things besides sport.
Yeah. Do you think that sports just helped you in more aspects than one? Because I know that a lot of athletes, I mean, even when I danced, dance did so much for me. How is soccer that perfect outlet?
In terms of life lessons, discipline, resilience, you're kind of in pain a lot. You're running a ton, you're lifting. So it's really hard on your body. So one, just like learning how to take care of your body is a huge thing. And they really helped you with in college sports discipline. We would be at school all day and then we go to practice for, 3 hours. And then you had to be disciplined enough to, study or make sure you did go to bed in time or, stay out late, that kind of thing, so that you could perform the next day. And so I think that translates into a lot, whether that's school or work, and also just like, time management. I didn't have as much time in the day to do some of the things for school or just like other errands. And so you get pretty good at managing your time. For me, that was really important with going into a master's program because they're kind of throwing everything at you at once and you have to really speed up your learning process. So that was a huge thing, but also just kind of being part of a community or a team too. It's not always going to be perfect. Going to be some people that butt heads or it's not always going to work out exactly how you think in terms of your performance, but rallying around each other or the coach and really leaning on people is a big deal as well. And that's another thing where you can kind of find that in your everyday life too. I think it definitely gave me a lot of good qualities. And the other thing too is then it was also an outlet. So even when I did have a rough day at school or, I had so much to do, I could go out and play soccer and I loved it. And then I could kind of take a break from the other responsibilities and then get back to doing what I needed to do after. So I think it was definitely an outlet in that sense for sure.
That's amazing. I love when their sport has taught them so much because there are so many people out there that did a sport and loved it, but sometimes there's just that one coach or that one person that just it ruins the sport. When an athlete just loves the sport throughout the entirety and still even after their career, that I absolutely love it. Like sports is a way for people to just get away from their life. What advice would you give to girls and women that want to play soccer?
I would just say sports should be fun. Sometimes there are hard moments that you do have to push through, but I think one thing that my parents did for me that was really great and helped me was they never really pushed me or said, okay, you have to keep playing. At the end of every season, they'd be like, okay, do you still want to play next year? And every time I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And so I think kind of finding that healthy balance, it goes by fast and you really do need to work hard and you will do better if you practice. But if it's not fun for you, maybe that's not your sport and go find what you really like to do. There's so many awesome sports nowadays that just getting active and being part of a team is kind of the biggest things, whether your parents played a sport and you feel like you have to, or you feel they want you to keep playing. If you don't like it, then go find something else that you can be passionate about and you do want to pursue. Because I feel as long as you're being active and, being part of something, then you're learning and growing and just having fun with it.
Thank you for listening to the first episode of Unapologetically Athletic. And thank you, Allison, for being this episode's guest.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Next, we will take a deep dive into women's gymnastics with guest Maggie Nichols, a former member of Team USA and six-time NCAA national champion. You can listen to this episode and future episodes on Spotify, or if you wish to watch it, click on the link in the description to take you to our YouTube channel. See you next time, and don't forget to be unapologetically athletic.